Welcome to the Be Better podcast, an initiative of the University of the Free State's Organizational Development and Employee Wellbeing Department. Here, you will find inspiration to be better at your job, with others, and most importantly, with yourself. You will hear new things, old things, and hopefully experience that moment of clarity that you've been waiting for. So, listen on. Dr. Riaad, thank you once again for joining us for this podcast. My name is Benedict Muchisela, and just for the audience, with me today is Dr. Riaad Moosa, also noted as a funny doctor, or rather a healing comedian. Whichever way you look at it, Dr. Riaad is really an extraordinary person. I cannot think of a better way to end 2023. Obviously, everybody's tired at this point in time. Yeah. And some are angry and even unmotivated.
Right.
So thank you for making our annual men's breakfast such an impactful event. We're all energized and recharged for the last month of the year. So in terms of the questions that are to follow, Dr. Riaad, I'm not going to be personal, but I just need to know. Similarly, would probably be the case with the rest of our audience. I know you've probably told the story over and over before.
Yes.
But please explain to me how one gets into the medical school for a start, completes it, and then becomes a comedian. You know, most people dream of becoming a doctor and put in so much effort in pursuit of that particular dream.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to imagine how someone would pass up the opportunity to wear the white coat.
Yes. No, I never planned to do comedy. Mm-hmm. So my whole life, I wanted to do medicine. Both my parents are doctors, and my father's an orthopedic surgeon with a super specialty in hand surgery.
Yeah.
And my mother's a general practitioner. And I always wanted to be a doctor. So that was always my aspiration. But I also had this tendency to try and perform at times, impersonate people. And I gravitated towards theater at school, you know, so I'm generally a quiet person. I'm introverted by nature, but I do have an affinity for the stage, which is a strange thing.
Yeah. Introverted comedian.
Yes.
Doesn't sound right.
Yeah, but it's actually quite common. You have comedians, we the observer types. Mm-hmm. So there are people who are the class clown and who are the center of attention and who sort of feed off the energy of people, you know, to provide humor. I'm more of the, you know, observational type. I'll sit and watch people, generally be quiet off stage. That's my nature. Mm-hmm. So introverted, as you know, is like your nature is to gain energy from the quiet, mm-hmm. whereas extroverted, you get energy from people. So when I am in public and doing all these things, it's quite draining for me, as opposed to some other comedians who need it. So in order to function, a good example of that is Trevor Noah. Mm-hmm. Trevor needs people around him all the time in order to function, whereas I'm a loner in a sense, you know,
a lone wolf.
Yes. So I always wanted to do medicine, but then in high school I did magic. It's my first sort of experience with the arts. Mm-hmm. I went to a place called the College of Magic in Lansdowne Road, Claremont.
All right.
And at the College of Magic, I sort of started to do magic and learn these tricks. But my magic always took a comedy slant. And at that time, I never knew about stand-up comedy specifically, mm-hmm. per se. But the style of magic and all the funny pattern one-liners is what I actually liked. And I did magic for a number of years as a sort of a hobby. And only after fourth year medicine was I exposed to stand-up comedy. Yeah, properly exposed to stand-up comedy. And when I saw that for the first time, it just captured me.
You were sold.
Yeah. And it was, you know, that post-94 era, you know, where there was so much possibility And I met so many of my sort of comedic contemporaries. At that point, we hadn't interacted as different races, because like I would say that high school, it was apartheid for me, and then university was New South Africa. And then all of a sudden I'm experiencing stand-up comedy, and with all these guys of so many different backgrounds that I've never been exposed to, right? But we all had the common love for stand-up. So it was that time with, when I met David Cow and Kagiso Lediga and Mark Lottering and Stuart Taylor in Cape Town, Louis Sogola,
Those are big names.
Yes, and we were sort of the clique, part of this new age comedy group, because up till that point, like stand-up comedy would predominantly have white audiences. And then what would happen is, because of us, we sort of started performing together, and the audiences became more mixed, and also we started branching off into individual genres. Like for me, I developed the Muslim genre of stand-up comedy, which up till that point did not exist.
I can imagine.
And like, for example, David Cow has a big brand, Blacks Only, still is going on today. And then all of a sudden you are seeing and being exposed to the different cultures and learning about the different cultures through the medium of stand-up comedy. And that's what was nice about it. But I never, when I actually finished my medicine, because I was doing comedy as just on the side, I never knew I'd be doing it as a profession. It's just at that time, David Cow and Kagiso had a show called the Pure Munati Show. And because we were all like friends together, they invited me to be part of the group. I ended up being the head writer on the second season. I followed the path of least resistance, actually, so I never had to challenge my parents, like, Mom, Dad, I just want to be funny, right? And then go to sleep in my car in Johannesburg and wait tables so I could have my big break. No, it was never like that. I would be doing medicine at the same time as the comedy. So I remember when I was just starting out in Johannesburg, I did my internship at Natalspruit Hospital, and I would be working the whole day, and then I would drive through to Melville at night and do stand-up comedy, or go through to Four Ways for Joe Parker's gigs and do stand-up comedy. And then the next morning I'm back early at Ward Round,
Yeah, that's hectic.
So it was never planned, but I'm happy with the direction it's gone in. And even now in stand-up comedy, I'm bringing in more of my medical persona, so I can maybe communicate health ideas in an entertaining way.
So just on another one, obviously one has listened to many interviews with comedians rather, and most of them had a much deeper reason for developing a skill for comedy. Some of them like trying to make their sick mother laugh or avoiding bullying at school, things like that.
Yeah.
So for you specifically, where does your funny come from? Was there also a deeper reason behind it, beyond the fact that you mentioned now that it wasn't the plan, but you sort of ended up there doing comedy? So obviously it may allude to the fact that there's something that really spoke to you as well, that made you take this direction.
I'm sort of captivated by the puzzle of making a joke. That's what captivates me, when you're trying to work on different angles for a joke, and putting the correct words in the correct place and doing it perfectly and not using too much words. It's like the whole process of creating a joke and performing it for the first time is very enjoyable, because the first time you don't know if it's going to work. So that time, and then the second time, okay, whatever. All right. But the first time is that the risk, of creating this, what you think is funny, and presenting it to an audience.
And seeing that reaction.
Always captivated me. Now, my grandfather used to be a joke teller. I remember watching him, and he was one of those natural old school joke tellers who just kept like sort of entrance a room just with his joke telling ability. And to a certain extent, my uncles have that ability. My parents don't.
Which is very odd.
Yes. But however, I would even say that I do have my father's nature more, but I have the ability to tell jokes like my grandfather. So it's like, I don't think I ever utilized humor as a defense. I never. So a lot of people use humor as a defense.
That's very true as well.
Right.
Yeah.
For me, humor was more like, I would even say, forcing myself to be playful, because I'm a naturally serious person, which is weird. So now in my old age, right, when all my friends have become more serious, right, when I started out serious, I'm the most playful one, because my job involves that, you know. It involves play and it involves creativity. And I think that's why I'm actually drawn to it, because my nature is a sort of almost a melancholic nature, and I almost use the stand-up comedy to alter sort of this makeup that I have, and I think that's why I gravitate to it.
Now, you've already mentioned the history of comedy within the family, your grandfather's ability to capture a room, and that could almost allude to sort of being hereditary in a way. So the question is, can you actually learn comedy as a skill, or is it something that you're born with? You know, often with leadership, they tend to speak of born leaders. So with comedy, do we have born comedians, or is it
You do have born comedians, and it's definitely innate at times, but you can learn, you can become better, without a doubt. I think you do, like, for example, there's certain things that you can't learn. Funny bones, you can't learn. So the funny bones refers to this intangible funniness that you see in some people. That you just around them and then
they're able to crack a room up,
or they just funny, you know. A lot of they off. There's something off about them, you know. And that's what we call funny bones. I think you do need a sense of humor. So you need that understanding of humor, but you definitely can learn, without a doubt. It's like, I mean, comedy is one of those professions where you learn through failing. That's the only way you're going to do it, because you only learn through performing, and you got to stand up in front of that audience, and you got to express your thoughts, and the capital is laughter.
Yeah.
And the benefit of it is that it's immediate, and it reveals a lot, and you can utilize that to guide you in how you create your material. So I will just do the way in which most comedians write material is through trying stuff out, and then adjusting and trying again, and adjusting and trying again, and adjusting. And eventually you have this body of material that you could potentially utilize in a show, or just keep on building on.
So essentially you can read the crowd eventually based on that.
Yes, through skill. The experience and understanding. The more you do it, the more you have understanding of the audience, the more sort of jokes you accumulate over a period of time. You know, you just become better at it.
No, makes a lot of sense. Similarly to any other profession,
right.
Obviously. The more you do it, the better you get at it.
Right.
So now, thinking back to your career choice and realizing that a comedian is some type of doctor, according to science, obviously laughter enhances your intake of oxygen-rich air, as you've already noted, to the stimulation of your heart, lungs, and muscles, and also increases the endorphins that are released by your brain. Now, you've already noted that it causes your body to produce its own painkiller as well. Now, but I want to talk a bit more about the mental health effects. The theme for our men's breakfast was decrease the distance, right? And now, based on the saying that laughter is the shortest distance between two people, has anyone ever come to you after a show or after watching a YouTube video of yours and said that it helped them to feel better or resolve some issues?
Oh, without a doubt. I get that a lot. I get that a lot, without a doubt. There's something magical about laughter in that sense. However, as I said before, laughter is, and humor is it's more a band-aid. If it's used intermittently, it's a band-aid. And it's not necessarily something that is curative. It's a treatment, a temporary treatment. And sometimes you actually have to delve into the actual issues in order to deal with the real trauma. And but definitely in terms of connection between people, laughter is contagious.
No, definitely.
So even if you think about during COVID, we'd have to do these virtual shows, right? And then I don't hear real laughs. I have to see emojis in the comment section, but
it's just not the same,
right? It's not the same. Why? Because laughter is actually a social cue. It's a social cue to indicate that you're not threatening. It's a social cue to express joy. It's a social cue to express cohesion, right? And community. So people are, I think, 15 times more likely to laugh when they're with a group than when they are by themselves.
That's
so for example, even if you type, you find something funny, and then what you do, you type LOL, but you don't laugh out loud.
That's very true.
You know?
So it's very superficial in that nature.
Yes. So when you have people with you, then you express laughter, and when other people are laughing with you, it actually spreads to you.
No, that's very true. Now, obviously, beyond being a comedian, at times you've got your personal life as well.
Yeah.
So when you're not on stage, what role does humor play in your personal life? You've mentioned you were an introvert, you were the serious guy. Now you're the one that is actually the more playful of the two.
Yes.
But now, with that being said, at this point in time, what role does humor play in your personal life?
No, it's the thing. You know, I mean, I love... It's the only issue is I sometimes take jokes seriously and then it becomes, then what is usually a stress relief for someone becomes something stressful. But I'd like to sort of always have a veneer of humor over everything that I do, and I predominantly do that with, funny voices and acting out funny things with my kids in that sense.
Now you actually touched on a very important thing, where some individuals may take jokes personal or serious.
Yes.
So how do you think we can use humor to better connect with one another and also with ourselves, especially against the backdrop that we aren't all comedians or even naturally funny? So how can normal people, not that comedians are not normal people, but how can the average Joe apply humor to improve their lives on a daily basis?
Well, I mean, there's different theories of humor, right? You can either have the superiority theory of humor, and that's where someone is mocking someone else and making fun of someone else. Then that tends to be the humor on the playground, and that's not always the best type of humor. It's a more bullying nature of humor, and people can look at, if people love jokes, they can look at it and accept it, but it's hard. Even if you do these roasts, have you seen any of these roasts? They can be extremely difficult, even for the people there, But then there's the sort of innovative, creative form of humor where you sort of build on new ideas, like connecting two things that you think is separate and you bringing it together. Now, a lot of times you can do that with a technique in improv comedy they call yes and.
All right.
Right? So it's a technique for the people who would like to research it. When we do improv comedy, for example, if I go like this to you, right? And then what would you do? I'm like using my fingers here and I'm pointing it at you. Okay,
Yes.
so I'm doing this to you now.
What I would do is probably raise my hands.
Yes, okay.
As well.
So now what would happen is you could either go, right, and I say, stick it up, give me your money. And then you can go, yeah, but that's your fingers. And then on stage, and people will laugh at that because it is your fingers.
Yes.
But then the scene ends. Right? But if I put my fingers up and you put your hands up, now we started a game.
I understand.
Now we started a game. And generally, in terms of creativity, when people throw out ideas, right, you shouldn't judge those ideas, because sometimes a bad idea leads to a good idea. So in improvisation, you know, the technique of yes and, which means I accept what you are giving to me and I'm adding my own thing to it, right? And everybody builds on top of that. So this technique of creativity, I think, is extremely important to people. And sometimes it will give you innovation, and sometimes it will give you humor. Now, the innovation is when you're putting two different ideas together that you thought was separate, and all of a sudden it comes together to give you something new. That's creativity. And then comedy is ideas that you didn't think relate, but you put it together and it somehow comes together to make something new that makes logical sense. Now, comedy is more like you have different ideas you put together and it makes logical nonsense.
I hear you.
Right? So with innovation, right, you usually get what they call an aha moment. You go, aha, right?
Yeah.
And in the same thing, with comedy, you don't get a aha moment, but you get a ha-ha moment. And it actually originates in the same part of the brain.
Yeah,
so
it's good to know.
It's I almost think humor is there's something spiritual about humor, because life is weird. Usually good things, bad things, things you don't like is the good stuff, and the things that you want to do is the bad stuff.
That's very true.
Right?
That is very true.
And life, when you and that is by its nature funny. Two opposite things that exist at one time that elicits this laugh. When you see the logical nonsense of our existence, that's what a laugh is, and that is, there's something deeper and spiritual about it. I'm actually trying to research the neurobiology of it and the neuroscience of it, and see if I can like figure out my own theories related to this. And I'm looking at spiritual teachings and seeing if I can get anywhere.
No, that's very interesting. So for the listeners out there, as far as applying humor within your lives, creativity, as has been mentioned, is something that actually comes from being humorous about things. So think about that as well in terms of how you apply yourself with your work on a daily basis. Now, Dr. Riaad, obviously this time of the year, many young people are making career decisions, especially within a university environment. We've got graduates that are finishing as well. So what advice can you give them to make it a little less stressful? Because obviously graduating and the job market and everything surrounding that is always often stressful. So this time of the year, what advice could you give them?
I especially as a young person, I think you just should do your best to try as many things as possible and learn as much as you can. In terms of my experience in my life, I'm only growing to understand what I truly appreciate and what I truly want to do in life. In my 40s, I have instincts that I'd like to do this, would like to do that, but the clarification of that truth of what I want to spend my time doing, it only became distilled after me trying a variety of things, right? And learning about a variety of things before I actually figured that out. And ultimately, I think that's what what we should do. It's like, I think our existence is to try and gain beneficial knowledge and leave that to the people who are going to come after us.
No, definitely.
Because like, even just if you look at our brains, what separates us from animals? What separates us from animals is that we have this big frontal lobe, and that frontal lobe allows us to see what could be, right? We can abstract or see a future, right? And then manifest that thing that we think is going to be into reality. You know, we are able to do that.
That sense of imagination.
Right?
Yes.
Right? Other animals can't do that. Just using the logic, because we are able to do this, that's what we should do.
No.
And just make sure you learn as much as possible, and try things out as much as possible, because that's going to sort of clarify the direction you want to be in. And especially as a young person, you know, I don't think like be ridiculous, you know, just being reckless in your choices. But I mean, as a young person, I think you do have some time to explore the possibilities and the direction your life can go in. Everybody has obviously got different personal responsibilities and circumstances, but as a young person, at least before you get married, at least before you get kids, you know, see where your talents also lie, and where your inspiration lies, because then you won't need to work, because you'll be living an inspired life, and then work is not work anymore.
No, thank you very much for that, Dr. Riaad. So just in closing, Dr. Riaad, thank you so much for your time and insights, and of course for all the laughs. I think everybody enjoyed the session that we had this morning at Kopanong Auditorium.
Yeah.
So obviously you are somebody that's also on the socials. So if people want to get in touch or follow you, where can they find out more information?
So just at Riaad Moosa on all the socials.
At Riaad Moosa.
At Riaad Moosa, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. But LinkedIn is just Riaad Moosa.
No, that's fine. No, thank you very much for that then. Yeah, that comes to our close of our session for this morning. And yeah, everybody who's listening and tuning into the podcast, we hope you enjoy it. And once again, Dr. Moosa, thank you very much.
Thanks,
for your time.
bro. Thank you.